Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. 2, because I'm a fan of punk music. And 3, it's just more fun, right? If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. Please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back. And thank you. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Steven Van Belleghem, who is an international keynote speaker, an author, and an entrepreneur. Hi, Steven. How are you doing?
Hey, Adrian. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me in your podcast.
You're very welcome. Now, we've known, I think, we were just talking before we kind of switched on record. We've known of each other, but never actually met before. So this is actually a real treat for me. So I'm interested in the next question, kind of just as much as anybody else might be. So can you tell us and tell me actually a bit about yourself and also a bit about the work that you do?
Absolutely. My passion is to create and share ideas about the future of customer experience. That's the core of my passion. Mm-hmm. And I do this on multiple platforms. The most important part of what I do is give presentations in person, now today virtually, of course, write books, write articles, make videos about this topic. And that's the core of my activities. I'm also the co-founder of a company called Nextworks. Mm-hmm. And with Nextworks, we organize inspirational journeys for people to innovative places like Silicon Valley, like China, like Dubai, Berlin. Mm-hmm. And we take executives there and show them around, show them 25 companies in a week and show them what's happening in the world. That's also an important part of what I do. And I'm involved in a number of companies as an investor or advisor. And the last thing I do is I'm a board member of the Plan International Foundation.
Nice, fantastic. Now you mentioned you write kind of books and do speaking and things, and I know you've written a few books, but now you've just released a new one called, and I've got it right here, "The Offer You Can't Refuse: What If Customers Want More Than Excellent Service." Now, first of all, I really like it because I love a bit of color. Right? It's the inner child in me. But can you tell me about the book, kind of how it came about, sort of who's it for, and what's sort of the main thesis of the book?
Yeah, of course, with pleasure. So, it's been an interesting year. I tend to call 20.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. and it's been terrible on many things, and it's been quite fascinating on other elements. And I tend to call this the year of the biggest digital training course the world has ever seen.
Nice,
It's like we stepped in a time machine in March 2020 and got off in March 2030. If you look to the evolution of for instance, digital.
Yeah.
And one of the consequences is that digital convenience has become the most natural thing in the world for many, many people. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a commodity right now. And the question that I have is, what are customer expectations that go beyond convenience? And that's the core of my book. What comes next? And I play with two dimensions. On the one hand, I talk about how can you become a partner in life of people, which is about understanding the human behind the customer and playing a valuable role in their life in a way that goes beyond selling a product and goes beyond giving them good service, but without being intrusive. That's the balance you need to find there. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, it's about adding value to society. And it's not really about changing the world, it's about changing your world. I think
Yeah.
every organization, small or large, has certain assets, has certain strengths that they can apply to improve the world for the better.
Uh-huh.
And if you combine those, being a partner in life, adding value to society, but also offering that great digital convenience, that's what I call an offer people can't refuse. And that's in short the essence of the story that I bring in this book.
Yeah. That's perfect. I mean, and that really chimes with a lot of the stuff that I've been kind of thinking and writing about. But I wanted to just to explore the book a little bit and to give people a bit of a flavor of some of the things that are in it and some of the themes and ideas, if I may. And
Of course.
one of the first things I wanted to start with is this idea that you write in the book, excellent service is the new commodity. And I was like going, oh, I like that. And I wish that was kind of like almost like the norm, right? It's the expectation, but it's the norm. But I wanted to understand kind of what you meant by that.
Well, if you look to the last 10 years, technologies that changed experiences for customers were technologies like 4G, mobile, social media. Big winners of these technologies, the ones that really understood what to do with it, are the big technology companies, as we all know. And they created the norm, they created the standard. And I still meet a lot of companies who don't get this, who look at their own industry, who look at their direct competitor.
Sure.
And then they often feel like, okay, we're ahead of the curve. And they say that because they're faster than their competitor. And I sometimes tell them, okay, that means that you may be the fastest snail in the snail race. You're the fastest snail, but the snail is still slow. So it's important to benchmark yourself with the best in class, with those kind of companies that create a fantastic digital convenience and a fantastic customer service. And the crazy thing and the depressing thing for many companies is that those best in class have become the norm today for every industry.
Yeah.
And if you have it, that is for customers today the most natural thing in the world. If you don't have it, you're in deep trouble. So today with digital convenience, it's almost impossible to differentiate yourself in a positive way. The only way to differentiate yourself with digital convenience is in a negative way these days. If people know where to find it, people know what to expect. And if you don't, perform according to the expectations, you're in deep trouble. So that's the situation, in my opinion, that we are in right now.
The thing that kind of you remind me of just there is that there is this idea that we all know that people will pay for better service or better experience. And what many people don't seem to understand is that they will pay for it and they will travel also for better service and experience. But yet most people don't realize that they sometimes just get stuck in that idea in being in the physical world, but they don't necessarily realize that applies to the digital world as well.
Yeah, I agree.
People will travel both physically and digitally for better service and better experience. Absolutely. And I guess that's a real threat.
Yeah, I agree. It's reality today. I fully agree with that.
And so I know that you've talked about the kind of the offer you can't refuse. I mean, it's centered around this kind of model. And I wanted to explore that. I mean, I know it starts with the sort of the service element, and then it layers up. I mean, just so we can properly understand it, can you kind of go through the model and the different kind of layers, and also kind of what the implications are of each element? Because I think it's like building blocks, right? It's like you're saying the service is a commodity. Well, that's like the foundations of your house, and then you can build up from there.
Yeah.
So if you talk me through it, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. It starts with the basics, having a good product, having a good price, having a good service. That used to be the minimum demand for decades, and it's still important today. You can have a restaurant that is using food from local suppliers, that is giving leftovers to people that are less fortunate. You can have the most enthusiastic team in the world, but if the taste of your food is really bad, then people will not come to your restaurant. So
sure.
That has not changed. So the minimum demand is a good product. On top of that, the next layer is digital convenience, what I just described. The fact that things just have to happen as convenient as possible. is, and if you do that well, you basically create transactional perfection. This is about optimizing every detail of the customer journey to create the optimal transaction. That's the second layer. And now we have that layer that I call partner in life, where you talk about the human behind the customer. Here it's mainly about emotional convenience, whereas a customer journey is about optimizing the buying process. A life journey is about understanding the hopes, the dreams, the fears of people in their day-to-day life and asking yourself how you can add value to that. And if you succeed in that, you create emotional convenience. That's the third layer of the model.
Right.
And then the top is changing your world, using the strengths that you have to make a difference. And this is increasing in importance because, if you look to Edelman's trust barometer that they do every year, there's a higher level of trust in business leaders than in government leaders. And about 74% of the world's population actually expect company leaders to proactively add value to society and don't wait until a government is imposing them to do so. So you feel that, the last couple of years, each of these dimensions have become more important. And I think in the last 8 months, we have seen that each of these levels has become even more important than before. People are more conscious about it. And we've seen that, I saw this study of McKinsey where you saw three things, basically. First, you saw that customer loyalty has never been lower than during the pandemic.
Yes.
The main reason is that people created new buying habits, mainly through digital channels. And the third thing is that people show the intention that they will stick to these new buying methods. So this is the moment in time where you need to stand out and where you need to show your customers like, look, we're ready for this. We're ready to change. We're ready to evolve together with you. And I believe that if you use the 4 levels of my offer you can't refuse model, that on multiple components, you're basically adding value to a customer. And if you do that, at the end, they cannot refuse doing business with you.
And just so I'm clear, I mean, because a lot of people might listen to that and go like, oh, that's about, the higher at the higher echelons. That's about, personalization, customization, but then also about purpose and stuff. Right? Are you saying that it's kind of sort of more than that because it's actually more connected? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It's all very much connected, and it relates back to the customer. Right. In theory, I'm a huge fan of a purpose and a why, but in practice, I haven't seen that many great examples yet. What I see is that, a group of executives, they go away for 2 days and they come back with a purpose. And if you look at the result, usually it's the average of the average of the average. I've done this test, Adrian, last week. I spoke for a big financial institution here in Europe. And I looked on the website of all the players in their market, in their country, and I wrote down all the purposes that were published on the website. And then I've done a small quiz with the experts in the industry and asked them if they could link the right brand with the right purpose. And I can tell you it was a total disaster. No one knew. The only thing that they knew was their own one because they recognized certain words, but they didn't have a clue how to link the other purposes to their competitors. They did not have a clue. Well, how can you expect your employees to know? How can you expect your customers to know if the experts in the industry don't even know? And that's because these things are usually meaningless. And, I would like to invite companies to make it more bold, to make it more actionable, to make it something that people remember, and especially make it a journey. Most of the companies, they create a purpose based on what they already do today. They write the sentence in such a way that everything that they do fits underneath that purpose. I think that's the most ridiculous thing to do. A real purpose that is linked to customer value should help you to make decisions about the future, about what to do, what not to do, what to stop, what to start, where to double down on. And let's be honest, in most of the cases, this is not happening. So that's a big problem. And you can talk about the purpose, but I think you need to link it back to your whole customer experience. And that has to be a perfect fit to make sure that it's appealing to customers and employees.
Yeah. because I think also the other thing is that people get when they take this on is that they also get caught up in the idea of like you've got to save the world or save the planet, but actually you've got to say sometimes you can reduce that down to like, why don't you just do right amongst your world in many ways. So it's almost like it doesn't necessarily need to be completely global or planetary sort of thing. It can just be almost like local and community based.
Yeah.
And one of the best examples I've ever come across is I spoke to this company called TCC, who are one of the largest Verizon resellers in the US, and they'd struggled with this. They tried to do the whole big purpose sort of thing, and they just fell flat on their face. And so they they rethought about it, and then they rethought about the fact that actually they are, rather than just like one kind of whole business, they are a business of like 1,500 stores and 1,500 communities.
Yeah.
And they thought, well, what can we do that makes a difference?
Mm-hmm.
And so they ended up doing all these local initiatives. So each store ended up having 4 events every one a quarter that was to have an impact in the local communities, and they were themed. So one was about supplies for kids going back to school. One was for supplies for teachers, like teaching supplies, like books and pens and pencils and chalk and whiteboard markers and all that sort of stuff. Another one was for supplies for people in care homes and for the care homes themselves. And one was for veterans. And they did that, and they do it repeatedly. And actually what's interesting is that they have created a huge amount of community engagement, but also customer engagement, and also as well as that kind of employee engagement. So in an ultra competitive market, they were able to outperform the market by sort of double digits, where everybody else is scraping by on low single figures kind of growth numbers, just because they figured out, let's figure out what matters to people, and then let's help make them matter. Mm-hmm. And from doing this multiple local community efforts, it all scaled up into massive impact. Mm-hmm. I thought that was very, very smart.
Yeah, very smart. I love those local examples because, when I give presentations, usually you talk about famous companies that a lot of people know. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes for some people, it's hard to link that back to their own industry. Like I'm doing a presentation next week for a group of hairdressers. Mm-hmm. And we had a brainstorm about it, but these people, this group, this profession can do so much for their community. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't have the money to go to a hairdresser or to, make sure that they look good on their birthday or on Christmas, on whatever day is important for them. You can easily create a program where you can help those people out, make them feel good that on the most important day of their life.
Yeah.
And, it's sometimes so easy to make a difference that mm-hmm. it's strange that it's so hard to see for many people. And they think it's not for them and it's for everyone else. Whereas everyone has a core strength and a core passion. And if you go back to your core passion of what you really like to do, there's so much that all of us can do to contribute.
Yeah. And so talk to me also about this kind of the model, because you talked about it from a customer kind of perspective, but we know also that you talk about customers picking kind of brands for the products and service, and also their, the experience that they offer, but also what they stand for and kind of like, and how they operate and things. But also mm-hmm. employees are increasingly doing that kind of now. So it becomes like a double-sided coin. I mean, does this model just apply from the customer facing perspective, or does it have an application for employee experience too?
Yeah, I love this question, Adrian. It absolutely works for employees as well. I actually wrote a chapter in the book about how to translate a model to employees, because I think the exact same needs exist for employees. And then it's not a good product and a good price. It's a nice job and good job content for a good wage is the minimum demand.
Yeah.
Digital convenience. I mean, every employee would love to have the same convenience in their professional life as they have in their private life.
Sure.
They don't want to go in a negative time machine when they go back to their office.
Yeah.
Partner in life becomes partner in career.
Mm-hmm.
And changing the world, I've seen in research that this is even more important for employees than for customers. Customers can live to do business with a company that is not changing the world if they have a unique product. Yeah. But employees, they want to work for a company that does something more than just making money. They want to work for a company that can make them proud. And you know, it's so crucial for them. But it's the same thing. You need to have the basics right as well before you can actually leverage on that changing the world. But I'm convinced if you want to attract young talent, if you want to attract people who are really motivated and want to go the extra mile, you need to invest on each of those 4 components for your employees as well. I'm a big believer of that.
Perfect. I mean, I think it's really kind of interesting, and I love the way that it sort of scales up. But I guess, you know, we all know that the world has a lot of kind of has been exposed to a lot of different models, and sometimes the most powerful thing is actually showing or sharing kind of examples and stories of companies that either follow the model or actually, if you like, fit the model. So do you have a couple of examples of brands or organizations that you believe actually exemplify what you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. Can I share an example from Belgium of a company that is in real estate?
Absolutely. I mean, you can share examples from everywhere. I don't really care if it's from Belgium or if it's from, I don't know, around the corner from me.
Well, it's a great company. It's called Upcot.
Okay.
And
how do you spell that? Sorry, so then we can look it up.
Upkot.
Upcot. Okay.
Yeah, and cot, the last 3 letters, that is like a dialect that we use in Flanders, and it means student homes. It's a student apartment.
Okay.
And I love this example because renting out students' apartments is like a very traditional business. And most people that rent out student apartments are just interested in renting them out and making sure the building stays clean, right? That's their main concern.
Yeah.
But these guys do everything different. And on each of the levels of my model, they do so many fantastic things. Like if you take digital convenience, this is a student home where you don't need keys anymore. You open doors with your phone.
Right.
They have their own e-commerce platform just for students. So if you need a mattress, if you need some material, you know, all the typical things that you need as a student, you can get them from their own e-commerce platform. They have a marketplace. So if a student leaves one of the apartments and they have a lot of stuff that they don't need anymore in the rest of their life, they can sell it on that marketplace to other students. Nice. So they have this whole digital infrastructure. But it becomes really interesting when it's about partner in life, because they don't just want to rent out student rooms. They want to help those students in becoming better people and helping them out. So one of the things that they do is they have a 24/7 mental coach available in all of their buildings. So if a student is lonely, if someone is suffering from anxiety because they have exams, or if there's a conflict, or if there's discrimination, then they have a coach present 24/7 that can help them out, that helps to talk about those things, and that, you know, can support all these difficult topics. I've never seen a student home where you have these coaches available 24/7. And another thing that they do is the Upgrade Academy. So they believe that students need more qualities in life to be successful than just the stuff that they learn in their courses. So they organize all kinds of events with famous entrepreneurs, famous speakers, with all different topics that may motivate students to do more than just going to school. That's one thing they do. And then you have changing the world. Everything in those student homes is created with sustainable materials. They created, and I think this is really impressive, they created their own energy company to make sure that all the energy is 100% green. And outside of the buildings, they have their own chickens walking around to recycle to take care of the organic waste, to make sure that that doesn't have to go through other processes. And these are just a few of the examples that they do, but I'm so fascinated by this company because on each of the levels, they act completely different than all the other players. And doing this in such a conservative market, I think that is just wonderful to see.
That's awesome. I'll definitely go look those guys up because they sound super cool. Do you have another one that you can share with us?
Sure. Let's go to the United States.
Okay.
And let's take CVS Pharmacy.
Okay. Yeah, know those guys.
one of the larger pharmacy chains. Of course, they have their e-commerce platform up and running. They're really good in that. But they're going through a big transformation to become a partner in healthcare. They don't just want to sell medication to you anymore. They want to make sure that they can help you out with all aspects of your personal health. And you know, in practice, this means that they have, for instance, dietists available in their store. So if you want to lose weight, you can talk to those. They can give you a personal kind of advice to make sure that you find the right products.
Right.
They have doctors in place. So they want to be the health hub for everyone. And then in the top of the model, changing the world, I think they've done this really bold move a couple of years ago, because their mission statement is let's make America a healthier place. And a couple of years ago, someone told them, they said, well, that's really cool that you have that mission statement, but let's face it, you are selling cigarettes in your stores.
Right.
Now, as a European, it's really awkward to hear that a pharmacy is selling cigarettes. But as you know, in the US, these pharmacies are supermarkets, basically. So they sell everything. Yeah. Including cigarettes. But
I mean, I guess the clue is in the way they call them drugstores.
Right. Yeah.
So any type of drug, really.
That's basically what you can get. But you know, they were fair. They said this is a fair point. We shouldn't be selling cigarettes. So they decided to quit selling cigarettes. And that sounds like an easy decision, but these guys made $2 billion in selling cigarettes. Yeah. So when they
that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. And let's face it, Adrian, that's easy money. Huh? If selling cigarettes is not that hard. People come in, they ask for their cigarettes, and you just give them to them. That's about it. And the guys at Wall Street, the Wall Street analysts, they thought that the management of CVS completely lost it, because they said, you know, they're not just going to lose the $2 billion, they're going to lose all the other revenue that is linked to the 2 billion. All the whole smoking community will take their business somewhere else. So this is
blah blah
disaster. So the stock went down. Now the guys at CVS did this in a very smart way. They started a campaign saying, okay, we're gonna quit, but dear customer, wouldn't this be the best moment in time for you to quit together with us? Right. And they had their coaches ready, they had pharmaceutical products ready, and they really campaigned very intensively saying, look, this is the moment that you should stop smoking, because we're not going to sell you cigarettes anymore. And now we're a couple of years later, and what you see is that they didn't lose that revenue. And another result that is really, really cool is that the amount of smokers in the US decreased significantly because of this decision of CVS. So their smoking community didn't go elsewhere. Most of them just stopped smoking. Wow. And you know, I love those kind of stories, because afterwards it seems so easy to make that decision. But I can imagine in that boardroom when someone puts that on the table, and then someone asks, yeah, but guys, how much revenue is behind the cigarettes? And then someone is like, 2 billion, you know, and you can imagine how that meeting goes, but still you decide to take your responsibility and do it in a smart way, of course. And I like this. Then you change your world. So I love that example as well.
That's a great example. I didn't know that story, and so that, I mean, that's really super cool. So I mean, I know that kind of, because I don't want to go into the kind of book even kind of more, Stephen, because obviously you want people to go and buy the book. But is there anything else that you'd like to kind of just share with us about the book before I ask you just some general sort of like service and experience environment sort of kind of questions, just to get your take on kind of that?
Yeah, sure. Just one quick detail that I would like to add, and it's the story of Aladdin's lamp.
Okay.
You know the movie Aladdin, right?
Yeah.
So you know what happens? You find the lamp,
Yeah.
You rub the lamp, and then the genie pops out, and you got three wishes. I've done this experiment all over the world and asked audiences, like, imagine that you would find the lamp. What would be your first wish? And I let people think a little bit. And I can tell you that based on my real life research, that 95% of the people would choose a wish that gives value to their personal life or their friends or family. And only 5% chooses to solve a world problem. And, you know, at first sight, you could say, is this an embarrassing fact for humans? I think it is. This is embarrassing. We choose our own benefits over the benefits of another. But this is reality. And the story of Aladdin's lamp, you need to take that with you when you build the model of the offer you can't refuse, because some people get so excited by changing the world and about focusing on the purpose that they forget that the bottom of the model is about helping out customers first.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say a sentence that people don't like to hear, but for most of your customers, the reality is that they still think customer first, planet second.
Yes.
Some companies come to me and say, Steven, your model doesn't work because we're changing the world. It's the top, it's the best, but it's not working for us. Well, usually that means that their digital convenience is not good enough, or their product quality is not good enough. And then people will not buy your product just because you're a nice guy. Yeah. Idealists will, but the mass market will not. So I would just like to add that the story of Aladdin's lamp is a crucial ingredient to apply the model in the way that I think it should be applied.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I know kind of from my own research that, I mean, and and readings in particularly in terms of behavioral psychology and neuroscience, is that convenience trumps choice pretty much 99% of the time. And wow. just because we're kind of, that's the way that we're wired. Wow, because crazy, convenience means that we don't have to think. Right. And thinking requires us to expend energy because our brain is like a muscle, and we're conditioned to preserve energy because that's related to our own survival instinct. And therefore, convenience it trumps choice, and because choice takes effort. Mm-hmm. And so we almost have to fight against our nature to make some of these things can happen. Therefore, you've got to take that into account and that make people see that it's good for them and make it easier for them. And then that way you'll generate the right sort of momentum in the right direction.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Wow. That's impressive. I didn't see that statistic, but I can certainly believe it. Yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, I would say it's probably kind of like in that sort of region. I wouldn't kind of quote me on the 99%. I mean, that might be being a bit emphatic, but it's in that sort of region in terms of that's just the way that our brain works.
That's how it works. Yeah, exactly. I can fully understand that.
So let's change. Let's kind of like kind of talk more generally about service and experience, and because I've been like you, I've been sort of thinking and exploring, and watching some of the stuff that's been going on over the last kind of few months, and some of the massive changes that have been taking place out of necessity. And I've been watching what I've been calling these kind of the tectonic plates of business and consumer behavior sort of shifting, and what are they sort of, as a phrase, the imperatives that are emerging out of the pandemic. And I wrote a piece about this back in July. And I wanted to get your take on kind of, when I talk about the imperatives, I talk about these four, like learning, resilience, protection, and sort of this multifaceted experience thing. I mean, are you seeing some of the same things, or kind of like, what are you seeing that's resonating with you?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting to see. And if I was thinking about it, and I see three items that I've seen so many times with companies in the last few months, and it's resilience, it's creativity, and it's adding new experiences. And if you combine these three with hard work, I think that almost every company can benefit from the situation that we're in right now. That the combination of those is so strong. And I saw this one example of a cafe in the Netherlands that really illustrates that. Like in many countries in the Netherlands, bars and cafes were closed for a couple of months, but you had this small cafe called Luigi's Cafe, and Luigi decided in the beginning of the great lockdown, Luigi decided to become an entertainment company instead of a cafe.
Okay.
And he started with online bingo.
Nice.
He started to sell bingo cards on his website. He instantly changed his website, and he started to sell bingo cards. And his children, if someone bought it, his children had to put that in the mailbox of the customers in the little town, so that the children took their bikes and they started to drive around and put the cards in the mailboxes. And then on Saturday evening, he went live, and they had an online bingo. And with the revenue, part of the revenue was used to create some interesting prices. And he went to other entrepreneurs in the same village saying, okay, I'm going to spend some money with you guys, and we're going to add prices to my bingo game. And of course, people could order drinks and foods to enjoy while they were playing the online bingo.
Right.
I can tell you, this became a huge hit. This guy had, after 3 weeks, 700 people joining in every week, and they spent between 10 and 30 euros each just on the bingo cards. So he had a revenue that was significantly higher than before the lockdown with his online entertainment. And he really got it. And he said, okay, we're going to do more. We're going to do online beer tasting. So then people could order 4 specialty beers.
Right.
The children brought that to those customers' homes. And then on Thursday evening, 8 o'clock in the evening, he had a beer sommelier that was going online and was explaining things about the beer. And then all his customers at the same time were doing that tasting. And again, it was a huge hit. And, you know, I love this example because this is a sector, an industry that was suffering really hard. You know, restaurants started with takeaway, but bars and cafes, what can you do? I mean, you were closed. Well, he completely changed everything. And this is, for me, an example. He showed resilience instantly. He had the creativity to create a new business model, and he created a whole new customer experience. And this guy worked really hard to make it happen, but it was a huge hit. And even, you know, a side effect, but an important one, is that his relationship with his customers just became stronger than ever before because of this. So I'm sure that when his cafe opened up again, that he was probably the most popular place in town because people had such a great experience of spending online time together with him.
I think that is tremendous. I love that
Great
example.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I loved it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the beer tasting is definitely going to get franchised and kind of like put into Belgium as well, given the history that you have with beer.
We should have done it. We should have invented it. It's terrible that someone in the Netherlands came up with that. You're absolutely right.
Anyway, so I mean, I know that you're kind of you think about the kind of future a lot, and so I wanted to kind of also kind of bound on from kind of like more of the sort of the almost like some of the present kind of challenges, and kind of also kind of think about kind of like the future a little bit, and kind of just to get your take on what you think the kind of almost what's the future of service and experience look like, and what do you think some of the kind of key challenges that lie ahead that organizations are going to have to, if you like, get over, work a way around it, just kind of tackle, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just to get your take on kind of what you're seeing kind of when we look a little bit further out.
Okay. Well, to start with the first part of your question, the future of service and experience, I'm going to put it very simply. I believe that the future of customer experience will be more digital, it will be more human, and it will be more local.
Yeah.
And I believe if you invest in those 3, that you can make a significant difference. This is also, in my opinion, the way that the majority of the organizations should fight against the big technology companies that are obviously very digital, but they are human-like and they pretend to be local, but they're not.
Yes.
And there's a lot of value in being real human and in being real local. And I think that's an opportunity for many organizations to make a difference. So that's one part of the answer. The second part, where you say, okay, what are key challenges that lie ahead? Maybe, in my opinion, the most difficult thing to deal with right now and in the next few years is that I believe that everything will become more short-term. Where changes are happening faster, more unexpectedly. And because of that, probably you will need a higher flexibility than ever before. When I said that 2020 is the biggest digital training course in human history, there's another thing, and this is then for businesses. This is the biggest exercise in flexibility for organizations. You don't know what your future will look like 4 weeks from now. That is new for all of us. But you feel that more and more organizations are starting to learn to live with that mindset. They start to take decisions in the short term. And this could completely change the way that we do business and change the way that we interact with customers. If we keep this mindset, that means that, in the next 2-3 years, that we're going to see so many unexpected changes that the level of flexibility will go up tremendously compared to the pre-pandemic situation, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. I mean, but I think the one thing that we kind of learned is that it's amazing what we can achieve when we're forced to, and much of the move to the big lockdown, most of it was fueled by adrenaline and kind of necessity.
Yeah.
And I think what we're also kind of understanding kind of now is that the adrenaline is starting to wane, and therefore we need to kind of almost build stamina to get through this, because otherwise, if we don't, then it's going to take its toll.
It's true.
And I think I don't know what the kind of, I can't remember which way around the old saying goes. I think it's less haste, more speed.
Yeah.
And we almost need to kind of like slow down and be a bit more kind of deliberate in what we do and how we do things, to be able to kind of pace ourselves for the longer term, which without sacrificing, flexibility and adaptability, but we need to look after ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
So, Stephen, kind of boiling all that sort of down, I mean, I know that we talked about some big sort of stuff, and as well as I do, that sometimes we talk about big ideas, people go like, oh, what am I supposed to do with that? So if I was to ask you to say, what would be your best advice to say somebody listening into this or reading their highlights and they want to improve the service or experience they deliver to their customers, and they want to kind of like prepare for the future? I mean, what would be your best bits of advice? What should they be doing sort of first, or what they should be thinking or asking themselves first?
Okay. I would advise them to appoint friction hunters in their organization. And friction hunters are people that look at everything you do in an organization from a customer point of view. Mm-hmm. And their output is to make a list of many, many small things that organization is doing, of which they know these things are frustrating our customers. Mm-hmm. And I've played this game with multiple companies, and it's fantastic to see how easy it is for organizations to make a list of 20 to 30 things of which they know, well, if we're honest, these are things that we've been doing for years, but we also know that it's frustrating our customers, but we're just doing them because it's what we do. Yeah. If you list those and you start to remove them one by one in a couple of weeks' time, magic happens. Yeah. Because then two things happen. Customers start to feel that you are more serious about them. Changing the details has a big impact on the way that customers look at you. Mm. And a second thing that happens is that your employees start to look at everything you do much more from a customer point of view. Yeah. They also feel like, hey, we're changing things here. Things are happening. And the fact that you remove and optimize a number of small things gives them the feeling like, wow, we're really doing a good job here. And it's a different mindset than what you see in most organizations, where they come up with very complex and large projects that take forever. And then when they're installed, it's a disappointment. Yeah. So I'm much more a believer of a large sum of small efforts and the impact that has than this one magical customer experience project. So friction hunters, that would be my advice.
I like that. I like the kind of term. I mean, I'm a big believer in that sort of that sort of approach as well. But I love the term friction hunters. So, thank you for that, Stephen. So one final thing, just to kind of like finish the interview on a bit of a we'll change the kind of the tack and do it in a bit of fun, because I always like ever since I published Punk CX, the latest book, which was back in summer of 2019. I've been asking everybody on the podcast like a couple of questions, and they're sort of like word association kind of questions around kind of Punk CX. And the first one is, what one or two words would you use to describe a more punk approach to customer experience?
I would describe it as going against the trend. Against the trend.
Going against the trend. Perfect. I'm going to write that down. Going against the trend. And the second one is, what company or brand do you think epitomizes that sort of ethos or that sort of approach?
I'm gonna name a company from the Netherlands again, my neighboring country, It's a company that sells bicycles, and it's called Van Moof. You spell that as VANMOOF. And these guys are so cool in selling their bicycles. Like they only sell them online. I'm just going to give you 2 examples of their coolness, right?
Sure.
So you can buy them online, and then they put those bikes in a huge box and they send them to you. Now, what they saw is that many people received a damaged bike because it's such a big box, and then the people who handle it are not always that careful. So how did they solve this? And this is so cool. They painted a television on the outside of the box and pretended that a television was in the box. Since they've done that, the amount of damaged bikes went down with 95%.
No.
And I thought this is brilliant. You can say, oh, be careful. You could say there's a bike in here, but they said, no, there's a very expensive television in here. So you better be careful.
Super cool.
That's super cool, isn't it? And then the second thing, most of the bikes that they sell are for people living in Amsterdam. And if you own a bike in Amsterdam, I don't know if you're aware of that, but there's this one problem. There's an almost 100% certainty that one day your bike will be stolen.
Yes.
It's not will it when it's not if it will be stolen, it's when will it be stolen. And these bikes are expensive. They're more than 2,000 euros. So a lot of people are worried about that. So they created this insurance pack offering people the guarantee that if their bike gets stolen, that they will find it back. And they've hidden sensors in the bike, GPS trackers in the bike that are almost impossible to remove.
Right.
So when it gets stolen, they can know where it is and they find it back. And if they don't find it back in 7 days, they promise you that you will get a completely new bike completely for free on their expense. And that's another example, because what they do here is they understand the key worry of people in their audience, and they remove that by taking the risk on their own shoulders.
Yeah.
And there's so many reasons for them not to do that.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But still they do it. And that's why they are so successful. That's why people love that brand. And that's why I thought this could be a cool example to be on your list.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Thank you for that, Steven.
My pleasure. I'm glad you like it.
That's been great. I mean, thank you for all the examples. Congratulations on the book. I really like it. I really enjoyed it. It completely resonates with me in terms of the approach. And there's some great examples in there. Steven, I just wanted to say thank you for your time today and for sharing, the story of the book and some of your insights and your perspectives. I mean, that's been kind of awesome.
It's been my pleasure, Adrian. I'm very proud that you have me on your podcast. So thanks for having me.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. One final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.